The story begins in September 1988 as a woman's narration introduces 5 teens who are watching the movie Better Tomorrow 2 with bated breath. At a climactic moment in the movie, someone reaches for the shrimp chips and explodes the bag all over the group. This is Ryu Dong Ryan, nicknamed Doryeongmyeon, aka Salamander, who lives in the house across the street. The voiceover tells us that he's their neighborhood counselor. Next to him, a prickly boy snaps at Dong Ryan to stuff his face later. This is Kim Young Hwan, introduced simply as Dog and lives upstairs. Next to him is Teek, who lives next door to Dong Ryan. This is his room that they're in, and he's a genius baduk player. Young Hwan and Dong Ryan both order Teek around in his own house, asking him to get a rag and bring more snacks, and Teek complies. The only one who speaks up in his defense is Sun Woo, who gets labeled human. The narrator says he's the most normal of all of them. Finally, we meet the only girl of the group, who punches Young Hwan to shut up so she can watch the movie. The narrator hesitates, then admits, "This is me." She's Sung Deok-sun, and she lives downstairs from Young Hwan. As the clock strikes 6, all the kids are called back home for dinner. Teek looks a little deflated, but then his dad tells him it's time for dinner too. The camera cranes up to show us their tiny little street in Sangmun-dong, as present-day Deok-sun narrates that she was born on this street and grew up here. Her family lives in a half-basement unit underneath Young Hwan's house, and their kitchen is a weird amalgamation of modern and ancient. Mom makes rice in a pot over coal and hands Deok-sun Dad's rice bowl, which she dutifully puts under the blanket on the heated floor. On the way we meet her older sister, Bora, a sophomore at Seoul University and their neighborhood's crazy girl. Deok-sun narrates that she's the top dog in their family. There's also her little brother, who looks like an old man but is actually 17. Upstairs, it's a totally different world at Young Hwan's house, which is furnished lavishly. Young Hwan and his older brother sit silently as Mom puts food down on the table and then takes it away, because Dad's coming home for supper after all. Young Hwan's mother sends him downstairs with a salad to fetch an extra bowl of rice for Dad, and he greets Deok-sun with a knee kick to the behind just to mess with her. Deok-sun's mom hands him rice and some kimchi she made, which he accepts. As the other kids make the rounds from house to house, Teek and his dad sit at a very sad-looking dinner table, with just rice and one stew. But it turns out they're the smart ones, because in no time their table is filled with side dishes from all the neighboring mothers. Back at Deok-sun's house, Mom excitedly asks for Dad's paycheck from the bank, and Dad expertly avoids the subject when she counts the money, knowing how very little it is. He says he helped out a friend who went broke after co-signing a bad loan. But Mom points out that they are broke because Dad co-signed a bad loan too. Dad is ever the optimist, saying that they have their health and their 3 smart children. But Mom breaks it to him that Deok-sun is in 999th place in school. Bora completely ignores their money woes and demands a new pair of glasses. But Deok-sun chimes in that this year she won't be sharing birthday celebrations with her sister, even if they're 3 days apart. Again, the contrast is stark when we move upstairs to Young Hwan's family, sitting in dead silence until Dad comes home. But Young Hwan's father turns out to be a goof who greets his family with song and dance. Sadly for him, his wife and 2 sons are entirely humorless. Young Hwan's older brother is a 24-year-old in his 6th year of studying to get into college. He is interested in pretty much everything except studying. Sun Woo has dinner with Mom and baby sister, and they mention Dad, though he isn't home. Both moms ask their sons about Deok-sun being chosen as a picket girl. It is then that we see what they mean when Deok-sun marches around her room holding up a sign for Madagascar to lead them into the Olympics opening ceremony. She makes a whole dance routine out of it and whacks her older sister upside the head with her sign. It's D8 before the 88 Olympics, and Sun Woo asks his mother for 1,000 won on his way out the door for their class to buy the teacher a wedding present. Young Hwan does the same, only he asks for 30,000 won. At Deok-sun's house, she just waits until her sister is out of the house before rating her makeup, expertly applying a horrendous combination of blue eyeshadow, bright red lipstick, scotch-taped eyelids, and matchstick curled lashes. Training to be a picket girl turns out to be hard work though, and Deok-sun looks pained as she marches around the stadium with her giant sign. It's a regular school day for the boys, or at least for Sun Woo, Young Hwan, and Dong Ryan. Teek is a pro baduk player, so he wouldn't be going to school with them. Sun Woo is class president, and he gasps to learn that the money the class gathered for their teacher's wedding present got stolen. He turns to Young H1, who's got half that amount just sitting in his wallet. The only thing Young H1 cares about is getting outside to play soccer with the upperclassmen, and when his friends refuse to come with him, he forks over the money to get them to come. We learn that Teek's dad runs the jewelry store at the end of their little street, and that Young H1's dad goes around trying his stupid jokes on everyone, and that they all ignore him equally. After school, Young H1 tenses up when he catches up to Dong Ryang on the street, and sees him surrounded by two older bullies in the same alley where their friend got their class money stolen. He follows closely, sizing up the potential fight and deciding that he could take them as long as Dong Ryang holds one of them off. He raises his fists and debates which one to hit first, left or right. Only he's discovered first and ordered to join his friend. Thankfully, they have very little money to be bullied out of, but just as they're let go, the bullies demand their sneakers too. They take them off as ordered, but Dong Ryang gets told to just keep his. Back at home, Sun Woo's mom and Deok Sun's mom wonder what to get their kids for their birthday, which happens to be on the same day. Sun Woo's mom figures that Young H1 is easy to shop for, since he just needs a new pair of sneakers. It's news to his mother that he was robbed of them, and mom sits across from Young H1 at the dinner table later, wondering how to bring it up. Mom finally asks if everything's okay lately, and Young H1 says he's fine, like always. Dad picks the worst timing to come home with another jokey greeting, and mom deadpans that divorce is always a possibility. Over at Deok Sun's house, they see some of the other picket girls giving interviews on TV. She says she's doing her interview tomorrow, prompting her older sister to call her a liar. The next day, Deok Sun gets called to the field for her interview, just like she said. She gives a terribly stilted recital of prepared answers, but she is blindsided when the reporter asks how it felt to hear the news that Madagascar won't be participating in the Olympics anymore. The poor girl bursts into tears on camera and says in a dramatic tear-filled speech that she might not get to participate, but she'll still be cheering for the Olympics like she's an injured athlete or something. Sun Woo's mom is worried he's been getting into fights and starts looking around in his room for some insight. It all looks normal, but then she discovers a pack of cigarettes under his desk. Sun Woo comes home to an interrogation, as mom presents the pack of cigarettes and asks how long he's been smoking. He swears up and down that they're not his, which she doesn't believe. But Sun Woo finally tells her the truth that he cut himself during shaving. Judging from the way this makes her burst into tears, it can be guessed that dad passed away, and he didn't want to let on that not having a father meant no one would teach him how to shave. He hugs her as she wails and says he's sorry for raising his voice. It turns out that today is the memorial of dad's death. Sun Woo was out because he was buying dad's favorite makgeolli, and the kids pour a cup and pay their respects as mom cries. The day of the Olympics opening ceremony arrives, and not a soul is out in the streets as the broadcast begins. Deok Sun's family gathers in front of the TV, and we learn that she's earned a spot in the ceremony after all. Her parents and brother scream in excitement when she appears on TV, and though Bora refuses to watch, she still listens from her room. Meanwhile, at his mom's prodding, Young H1 finally tells her that he came in first place on his latest test, and mom says she'd like to know things like that. She has to prod him to agree to talk more, and then she gives him the world's most awkward back hug. When Deok Sun comes home after her big day, dad is outside waiting for her. He takes her to the corner store, where she shows him all of the cool Olympics souvenirs she received. Dad says he has something for her too, and brings out a birthday cake just for her. He wonders what he'll do when she gets married and leaves him, but Deok Sun says she won't marry, and he chides her not to say such things. They light the candles, and he wishes her a happy birthday, and Deok Sun blows out her own candles on her own cake and gets to eat it all. It's late September 1988, and Young H1's dad busts out the new video camera to shoot footage introducing us to his lovely family. Except his eldest son isn't home. Prickly second son Young H1 shuts the door in his face, and his equally humorless wife puts an end to the shenanigans. Downstairs, Deok Sun snuggles up next to Grandma, who's sandwiched in between her two granddaughters. The elder sister tells Grandma that Deok Sun's nickname is Special Forces, as she is bad at studying. Deok Sun points out that she doesn't study much either, since she spends more time at demonstrations than she does in class. That leads to another fight, and Dad gets out of bed to yell at them. The following morning, the family sees Grandma off, regretting that she can't stay longer. Later, Deok-sun gets busy with her morning beauty routine. She decides on denim and runs out the door, and mom worries for her safety if her elder sister catches Deok-sun wearing her jacket. After the children have left, Young Hwan's mom and Deok-sun's mom prepare for tonight's party in celebration of Teek's latest Baduk victory. However, the latter encounters a crisis when her elder sister comes home from school early and starts packing for an unexpected overnight trip. She realizes that her favorite jean jacket is missing, which prompts mom to race upstairs to Young Hwan's. She then asks for the phone book and calls up the high school. She gets her son on the other line, and he reacts with just as much horror as mom did and takes off running for the girls' school down the street. He busts into Deok-sun's classroom screaming, and soon Deok-sun is running like the wind to make it home. It's a big finish as Deok-sun reaches her street and tosses the jacket up in the air, and mom catches it just in time to take it inside and throw it in the washing machine. Phew, mom pretends to find it just before her elder daughter is about to accuse Deok-sun of stealing it. Later, the adults start gathering for Teek's party one by one, and Young Hwan's mom brings out the spaghetti, which she mixes and serves by hand. Teek's dad arrives with chicken for the kids, and Young Hwan's dad turns on the new camcorder to record the event. His wife nags him to turn it off, so he puts it down, but it's still recording. Soon afterwards, the kids arrive, and it's cute that all the parents each have their favorites. Deok-sun's mom loves Sun-woo, and Young Hwan's dad loves Deok-sun, and everybody fights over Teek when he arrives. Deok-sun's dad calls him son-in-law, and Young Hwan's parents are ready to adopt him. They're here because Teek just won the biggest Baduk competition in Korea, and the parents ask how much prize money he won. His dad says 50 million won, and jaws drop. On the other hand, his friends start chanting for him to buy deokbokki. Sun-woo asks if Teek will be back from China before his birthday, because the boys want him to bring them back a bottle of liquor. Deok-sun is about to tattle on them until Sun-woo sticks his finger in her mouth and warns her not to tell. The other boys insist that Teek gets gifts like that all the time, and Young Hwan tells him not to hand them all over to dad, and save just one bottle for them. Later, the kids sneak out to get deokbokki, making sure not to disturb the singing and dancing adults in the living room. A few weeks later, it's October and the Olympics have come to a close. Deok-sun is the one taking care of her siblings' meals because mom and dad are in the country taking care of grandma, who isn't doing so well. Needless to say, it ends in another fight, this time with buckets of water used as weapons. At the boys' school, Dong Ryung reminds Sun-woo that they're going to the movies tonight. Meanwhile, at the girls' school, Deok-sun and her friend have their noses in books, not school books, of course, but high-teen romance novels, which are their latest obsession. Their friend reads a steamy passage aloud and scoffs that men like this don't exist in real life. Soon, Deok-sun finishes her novel and sighs that it was a weak one as there was only kissing. She grabs the next one, titled Dangerous Roommate, and begs it not to disappoint her. Deok-sun panics when she gets called to the teacher's office, sure that she's been caught with her contraband novels. But her friend hides them in a bag topped with pads and tells Deok-sun to say she was just delivering them. But when Deok-sun goes to the office, her teacher hands her the phone saying that she has a call from home. Meanwhile, the boys are washing up after a game of football when the Skobuli comes by to pick a fight with Sun-woo. He finds any reason to push the boy around just because he's better at soccer. Sun-woo just glares back instead of backing down, which only makes it worse. The bully then notices the necklace that Sun-woo is wearing and tells him to take it off, and Sun-woo refuses. He stands there stoically while the bully shoves him repeatedly in the head, saved only by the bell when they have to return to class. Dong Ryung and Young Hwan get hit too, just by association, and the latter asks why Sun-woo couldn't just take the damn thing off for a minute and then put it back on later. Sun-woo asks how, when it's his father's necklace, but clearly Young Hwan doesn't understand. In the meantime, Deok-sun breaks down in tears as her elder tells her that grandma went to a better place. She tells Deok-sun to come home so they can catch the bus out of town, but the latter is inconsolable. The scene shifts and the three siblings take the bus down to the country. Elder sister makes sure that her siblings get some sleep and takes all of Deok-sun's bags so she can stretch out her legs. When they get to grandma's house, she tells them to wipe their tears because they have to be strong for mom and dad. The funeral has already been going on for hours, and the site isn't what they expected at all. It looks more like a party house than a funeral house, with elders playing card games and chatting away over food. and Dad isn't a crying mess like they expected. In fact, he's happy to brag about his kids to the townspeople and reunite with old acquaintances. The next morning, Deok's son wakes up in a tiny room piled wall to wall with cousins and other assorted family members. She sees Dad slumped over like he's crying and gets up to go over to him. But then her aunts go to wake him up, and he seems just as chipper as ever. In the meantime, the boys go to the theater to see a racy film wearing army uniforms. It works like a charm, and they buy tickets with no one suspecting that they're minors. Meanwhile, the funeral continues, and Deok's son starts to get annoyed that Dad just gets progressively drunker, singing along with the elders at the table. She doesn't understand why no one seems sad. At the theater, the boys along with other group from the same school are caught by a teacher while coming out of the bathroom. He whacks the boys on the head one by one, and it's not until he gets to Dong Ryong that we find out that it's his father. The other boys who got caught happen to be the soccer bully and his posse. When the teacher says the only reason they're saved is because of Sun Woo, it only serves to make the bully even madder. He takes the boys out to the alley and sarcastically thanks Sun Woo for saving them all, intent on picking another fight. He fixates on the necklace again and tells him to take it off. But when Sun Woo stares him right in the eye instead of backing down, the bully yanks it off his neck. Dong Ryong speaks up and says that's from Sun Woo's father who passed away, and the bully seems to have enough of a conscience to stop. But then the douchebag covers up his own embarrassment by asking, "So what? Are you bragging that you don't have a father?" Sun Woo's eyes harden, and then suddenly a fist goes flying. But it's not Sun Woo's fist, it's Young Hwan's. He socks the bully right in the face, knocking him down with one punch. Back at the village, Deok's son and Inni clean up what looks to be the last of the tables at Grandma's funeral. Now only the family members remain, and they don't know whether the eldest uncle will arrive in time from America. Deok's son goes over to Dad and tells him to get some rest, and he smiles at her sweetly and says he's okay. Dad still seems fine, but then Deok's son looks up when a man comes through the front door, and Dad's face changes instantly when he hears his brother's voice calling out to him. Uncle approaches slowly and clasps Dad's face in his hands. That's all it takes for Dad to break down in heartbreaking sobs, asking why their mother had to leave them, and why they can never see her again. The aunts run to hug them in tears too, and finally Deok's son understands. In Seoul, the three boys trudge home, and Young Hwan is sporting a nasty bruise on his cheek and a cut lip. They don't really speak about the fight directly, but Young Hwan asks Sun Woo what he's going to do about the necklace. Sun Woo says he'll just stop wearing it. Sun Woo heads home and sees Mom in front of the TV inside. That makes him remember that he didn't eat the dinner she packed him, so he goes around the corner in their yard and eats it, just so she won't feel bad. He eats every last bite, even though the eggs have stray shell pieces and the rice has stray rocks. He then heads inside once he's finished, and Mom happily asks if his lunch was good today. He chirps that it was great. At Deok's son's house, Dad heads out to buy a new bulb and runs into Teek on his way home. Dad asks him to be his friend while he has a drink, and when Teek pours for him, Dad says he's all grown up now. Teek says he's sorry about Grandma, and Dad chides him for bringing it up and making him miss her. He asks Teek when he misses his mother the most, and Teek's eyes fill with tears instantly. "Every day. I miss my mom every single day," he answers quietly. Teek comes home to a dark, quiet house that feels extra empty tonight. But when he opens the door to his room, his four best friends are waiting with a birthday cake and yell. Surprised, it's basically a madhouse whenever these guys are together. Sun Woo insists on blaring THHE TV, and the other two boys go through his bag to get at the liquor, while Deok's son stuffs her face with cake and then threatens to tattle on the boys for drinking. It is revealed that Teek and his dad moved there after his mother passed away. As children, we see that their personalities were always this way. Young Hwan and Dong Ryong are naughty, and Sun Woo and Deok's son are nice. In no time, their group becomes 5. And in a cute little incident, little Teek takes a tumble down the stairs and breaks his arm because of their games, and the next morning Young Hwan and Dong Ryong each carry one of his school bags. Sun Woo shares his toys, and Deok's son offers him a piggyback ride. Back at the birthday party, Deok's son makes fun of the boys for getting drunk so easily, and we see them all laid out in a row with rosy cheeks. Once Deok's son has gone home, the boys watch another Joey Wong movie and sigh over how pretty she is. Young Hwan says that women like her don't exist in real life, so talk turns to real-life pretty girls. Dong Ryong mentions all the pretty girls in their area, and naturally, the other guys already know the prettiest ones. But then he adds, "Deok-sun is kinda cute lately, no?" He nudges Sun-woo next to him, who grunts in agreement. "Yeah, a little." Sun-woo nudges Teek next to him, who smiles and nods too. Last is Young H-wan, who bolts up and shouts that they have all gone crazy. On the other hand, Deok-sun heads to her room and freaks out when she catches her elder sister near her diary. The latter denies peeking at it, but then starts quoting verbatim this super flowery passage that Deok-sun wrote about her feelings for a boy and how she worked up the courage to express her feelings. Deok-sun wrestles her to try and keep her mouth shut, but the elder sister screams, "Muum tilde Deok-sun likes a boy. She gave him chocolate." We have the camcorder to tell us who got the chocolate. Rewind to the party at Young H-wan's house, when Deok-sun stopped to slip a bar of chocolate in one of the boys' bags near the front door. Then, the kids file out to go get deokbokki. Young H-wan and Dong Ryong pick up their bags, neither of them the one with chocolate inside. Deok-sun leads Teek out by the hand, but they don't take any bags. And last is Sun-woo, who stops to kiss his baby sister goodbye and then picks up the backpack with the chocolate bar. We back up a little to August 1988, where Deok-sun is learning the latest dance moves at the deokbokki shop. She's got her two besties with her, Myoke, the first girl in their school to get braces, and Ja-hyun, the romance novel supplier who shares a desk with Deok-sun. They're dancing to 80s boy band Sobangcha, and her friends insist she get the moves right because they only have a month left. The girls immediately stop dancing as the boys walk in, and Deok-sun's friends just gape as she chit-chat with the guys. Deok-sun calls out for more deokbokki on Young H-wan's tab, somehow understanding that his grunty "hey" of complaint is actually tacit permission. Dong Ryong calls her by her nickname Special Forces, and Sun-woo asks about her picket girl practice for the Olympics. Sun-woo taps Deok-sun on the shoulder to ask sweetly if she wants ramyun too, and though she turns them down because of Young H-wan's complaining. But when they boys leave, she has ramyun in front of her, and Young H-wan has paid the whole tab. Her friends stare agape and wait till the boys are gone to inform Deok-sun that Sun-woo likes her. They're sure of it, insisting that he didn't have to ask her for water or use skinship to offer her ramyun. They congratulate her on getting a boyfriend. Once the idea has been planted, it's all Deok-sun can think about. We catch up now to our original timeline in October of 1988, as Deok-sun's dad arrives home drunk, carrying bags and bags of vegetables that they don't need. Mom's frustration brings her to tears, and she asks how he can be so cavalier about helping other people when they can't buy things for their 3 children and Mom's socks are full of holes. Upstairs, Young H-wan's parents are arguing about money too, but in the reverse, Dad's brought home 5 whole tangerines, and Mom begs him to just spend some money like a regular person. He argues that it was only 3 years ago that they were dirt poor, but she doesn't want to hear that excuse anymore. On the other hand, Deok-sun asks Dad to buy her a Walkman, but he tells her to just share with her elder sister, as usual. Deok-sun's friends yell at her for still not having perfected the steps to their dance, when they're supposed to perform it at their school retreat tomorrow. She says she'll do whatever it takes to master it, dead set on getting first place in the talent show. The reason is the first place prize, that Walkman she's been begging for. Her secret weapon is Dong Ryong, who knows every dance to every popular song. That night, she gets a crash course from Dong Ryong, who mostly teases her for not knowing Sobangcha's moves already. She turns to Sun-woo and Young H-wan, who are just hanging out in the corner of the room, and asks if they know. But then we cut to Deok-sun's shocked face as she watches the 3 of them bust out Sobangcha right in front of her. We only get to see her reaction, not the dancing, and Sun-woo tells her that they won first place with this last year. Elsewhere, Deok-sun's dad heads upstairs to borrow money for her retreat, but can't bring himself to knock on the door. Mom already knows this and pushes past him to go in there herself, and Dad slinks away in relief. She shares a drink with Young H-wan's mom and tells her about the latest fight with her husband. She hems and haws over how to ask for money, and Young H-wan's mom asks if this is about the money she borrowed last time, assuring her that she needn't pay her back right away. Deok-sun's mom can't say anything after that, and leaves without being able to ask. She sits up the rest of the night, not knowing what to do. Deok-sun comes home and sees little bro counting a giant wad of cash in the yard, and he looks rather suspicious as he hides it and says it's his class money that he collected. He seems relieved that Deok-sun believes him. The sisters fight as Deok-sun packs for her trip, and Mom tosses and turns in bed. She's surprised when Young Hwan's mom comes down this late at night, bearing a basket of corn. It's not until she's gone that Mom notices an envelope tucked inside the basket, full of money. There's a note too, scrawled in terrible chicken scratch penmanship, indicating that she came from a really poor background too. It tells her to give Deok-sun money for her class trip. In the morning, Dad makes Deok-sun Pinky swear to guard their family camera with her life, vowing to disown her if she loses it. He gives her 2 rolls of film and tells her not to waste the shots, and she promises not to lose the camera. The boys pack too. Young Hwan takes out the secret bottle of whiskey he's been saving. Sun-woo takes 2 portions of his mother's kimbap and kisses his kid sister goodbye. And Dong-ryung meticulously mouses his hair. The kids take the train down to Jeongju, the girls all singing along to "Nothing's Gonna Change My Love for You," while the boys are busy drawing a bikini on Dong-ryung while he sleeps. When they arrive, Deok-sun's friends want to take a picture before they get on the bus. So Deok-sun reaches for her camera, which of course she left behind on the train. She's so upset that she bawls her eyes out and asks if she can go home, because she doesn't think she can handle the fear of Mom's wrath hanging over her. Her teacher offers to call and break the news to Mom. Though we don't hear the reaction that teacher gets over the phone, Mom tells Deok-sun not to worry and have a good time. That's all it takes for Deok-sun to bounce right back and dance on the bus ride. She assures her friends that they'll win first place in the talent show as long as they don't break their arms or something. Back at home, Mom's day goes from bad to worse when little bro's teacher calls to tell her that her son has been caught selling things to his classmates, which according to the teacher is because he wants to take his girlfriend out. Well, that explains the wad of cash. Deok-sun is eager to get more practice time before tomorrow's talent show, but her friends are more interested in sneaking over to the boys' guest house to watch their talent show. Deok-sun chases after them to try and stop them, but they hop over the wall. There's an unexpected lull of silence, and then a loud thud. When Deok-sun looks over the edge, her friends are sprawled out at the end of a really long drop. When Dad comes home, Mom tells him to go to their son's school tomorrow, and gets angry at Dad's cavalier attitude about it. She seems to be the only one upset that her son has resorted to selling things to have spending money. Deok-sun's worst nightmare has come true. Her friends have casts on an arm and a leg, and their teacher says that Mi-ok and Ja-hyun won't be leaving their room for the rest of the weekend. Deok-sun asks about the talent show, and teacher says she'll have to go it alone. She spends the rest of the day craning her neck looking for the boys, and finally discovers their bus as it pulls up. She can't get Sun-woo's attention, but manages to get Young Hwan, who slings an arm around her and passes her the bottle of whiskey. He asks her to keep it until tonight because their bags are about to be searched, and tells her that he'll come for it at midnight. Young Hwan just walks away after that, so Deok-sun is relieved when she runs into Dong-ryung and hugs him excitedly. He refuses to help her out with a talent show though, claiming an allergy to girls. Deok-sun knows how to bait him and says there's a girl in her school nicknamed Joey Wong and another nicknamed Maggie Chung because they're that pretty. It's a total lie. She's referring to her friends Ja-hyun and Mi-ok, who are nicknamed that way because their names sound similar to the actresses. It works like a charm though, and Dong-ryung wonders how to get Sun-woo and Young Hwan on board. Deok-sun tells him not to worry, sure that Sun-woo will come because of his crush on her. She says that Young Hwan will come when he utters the words, "something special," aka the name of the whiskey she'll be holding hostage. The talent show begins that night, and Deok-sun's friends worry that the boys aren't coming. Deok-sun is confident that they will though, and smiles when she sees them coming toward her. Sun-woo complains and Young Hwan tries to run away, but Dong-ryung drags them along. Dad goes to little bro's school to meet with his teacher, and though he's apologetic in front of teacher, he assures his boy that he's not in trouble at all. The kid is relieved, and Dad asks about the friends who got caught doing this with him. He says they're the same best friends he's had since junior high. Those friends see him standing there with his dad and call out to him, "Hey, half basement!" Although the boy thinks nothing of it and runs over there, Dad is suddenly struck with the realization that living in a half basement isn't something to be satisfied with. It's time for Deok-sun's turn in the talent show, but when her act is called up to the stage, it's 3 boys who head up without her. The boys pose with fingers pointed to the sky and then launch into the Sobangcha routine in perfect sync. Naturally, the crowd of screaming girls goes wild. Eventually, Deok-sun wins her precious Walkman, thanks to the boys. Sun-woo wonders if it makes her that happy when she knows that elder sister will just steal it from her, but she intends to keep it a secret. Dong Ryung asks to meet the pretty girls she promised, and Deok-sun dutifully introduces them to Mai Ok and Ja Hyun. Dong Ryung drags the boys away before they have to get too friendly with Deok-sun's friends, and Young H-won calls after Deok-sun to follow them. He tells her to hand over the whiskey, and Deok-sun realizes she forgot it all this time. She had it when she was talking to Dong Ryung earlier in the day. But he doesn't even have time to get mad at her though, because their teacher Dong Ryung's dad comes after them for sneaking out. Deok-sun just waves at Dong Ryung's dad, and Young H-won has to haul her away so that they don't get caught. They split up on the way, with Sun-woo and Dong Ryung running up ahead while Young H-won chooses to hide because Deok-sun can't keep up. Dong Ryung trips and falls though, and he asks Sun-woo to knock him unconscious before his dad comes. Sadly, they're caught right away. Young H-won and Deok-sun duck in between two buildings in a tiny sliver of an alley, with just enough room for two bodies to be pressed up against one another. At first, they're both breathing so hard from the running that they don't notice the closeness, and they're snapping at each other like always. But then she rests her head against his chest in exhaustion, and suddenly he seems to be very aware of just how close they are. Dong Ryung and Sun-woo get herded back to the dorm, while Deok-sun and Young H-won continue to hide in that space. It starts to get a little awkward for both of them, and they each look away as if that'll make it better. It only seems to get worse for Young H-won, who's aware of every little thing, the way his lips are inches from her forehead, and every point of contact between their bodies. He starts looking strained and looks like he's trying really hard to do something. Deok-sun seems to notice, and then things definitely get awkward. He tries to press his back further into the wall, which is just futile in that tiny space. Later that night, Deok-sun sleeps soundly with her Walkman, but Young H-won lies awake, unable to fall asleep. The next day, Deok-sun comes back from her class trip with a back scratcher as a present for her parents, only to be met with mom's wrath for losing the camera. But dad says they'll just buy a new camera and to stop berating their children. Mom says this is his fault, she wouldn't harp on everyone if he brought home a decent wage. Dad gets up and walks out, saying that he's going to get rich just like she wants, and mom shouts for him to just not spend any more money, and that getting rich overnight doesn't happen to just anyone. Flashback to 3 years ago in 1985. Young H-won's family is poor and living in a half-basement just next door. Mom gets mad at Hyung for his latest obsession, lottery tickets, and takes them away so they can eat. The TV remains on as the winning lottery ticket is announced, and Mom is the first to notice that the first few digits match. The family is on edge, mostly in disbelief, as the final number is called. It's the winning ticket, and they're so stunned that no one moves or speaks. It's November 1988, and we begin with another mad dash to school. The bus is so crammed full of students that latecomer Dong Ryung has to crawl through the window to get on board. Deok-sun is left out on the street, so she hangs out of the open doorway as the bus takes off. Only 2 seconds later, she's left sitting in the street. One day, Deok-sun announces to her family that she's going to college. They all look at her like she's crazy, and when she asks for a tutor, Dad tells her to learn from her sister. Deok-sun says she'd rather die than be tutored by her. Deok-sun's parents get invited to eat upstairs with Young H-won's parents, who wanted to share the fish they bought. Deok-sun's mom marvels at the whole fish piled high on the table, but it looks like what she's more envious of is the way Young H-won's dad dotes on his wife and peels the fish for her. In contrast, her own husband chomps down on his fish without even giving her a taste, and steals her rice so that he can eat twice as much. The next morning, Deok-sun's mom gets up early to start her day and runs into Young H-won's dad out in the yard. He's carrying a giant sheet of seaweed to cook for his wife because it's her birthday, and even stops to check on the laundry and pick up shoes on his way in. Mom watches all that with a little sigh and returns to her own house, where Dad is sleeping the day away. Elsewhere, this morning, Deok-sun manages to get on the bus, but it's crammed full as usual. Young H-won is clearly fixated on Deok-sun, who's surrounded by a few other boys nearby. His worry starts to build, and then there's a really big lurch that sends everyone sliding, and in her haste to keep from falling, Deok-sun reaches out to grab onto Young H-won's shirt. The buttons come popping right off and the shirt just hangs open. They just freeze like that, too embarrassed to say or do anything. Later at school, Sun Woo heads to the library to study and finds a cassette tape with a piece of candy in his locker. The note says, "All I can give you is this candy." And the song highlighted on the Byun-jin subtape is, "All I can give you is love." It isn't signed, but we see Deok-sun walking down the street with a bag of candies in her pocket and a smile on her face. Elsewhere, Young H-won is listening intently to the news report on Taek's latest match, where he was uncharacteristically bested by a newbie. He showed weakness, and people are speculating on a slump. Sun Woo is listening to the same broadcast in the library and turns to tell Dong Ryan about it, only to find him passed out on the floor. When Sun Woo gets home, Mom is on the way out with kimchi pancakes for Taek and his father. She tells Sun Woo not to say anything about Taek's loss in case he feels bad about it. That night, Taek's house feels even more quiet than usual, and Taek sits in front of his baduk board looking a little lifeless. Sun Woo's mom comes by with kimchi pancakes and whispers to Dad that they should just act normal, and Dad agrees, though he's worried because Taek seems more affected by this loss. Dad sighs to see Taek taking medicine. It appears to be headache medicine. When Taek's dad wakes up in the morning, he finds Taek still sitting in the exact same spot, having practiced all night long. Elsewhere, Deok-sun's elder sister is taking tutoring classes for the neighborhood kids. She checks to see what level everyone is at, and it's clear right away that Young H-won and Sun Woo are the smart kids and Deok-sun and Dong Ryan have little interest in studying. Deok-sun's parents run into Taek on his way home, and Mom makes sure to shush Dad about anything baduk related. They invite him and his father over for dinner, but Taek declines. He runs into Young H-won's mom too, who asks how he's doing and offers a conciliatory, "Be strong." Deok-sun heads out and her parents yell at her not to bug Taek either, and that they've all been taking great care not to make him feel bad. Sun Woo gets the same warning from his mom too. Taek's dad cleans up Taek's room and sighs to find a sea of empty medicine packets near his baduk board. Dad cleans up the shop when the kids start arriving one by one, and he tries to tell all of them that Taek's not in the best condition right now. But the kids all ignore him like they ignored their own parents and saunter right in. Taek is near tears sitting in front of his baduk board by himself, and Young H-won opens the door. At first he has the same look of pity that everyone else has been wearing around Taek lately, but then he greets him by insulting him about his loss. They all come in with similar greetings, pointing out his massive loss, not the tiniest bit sensitive or careful. Taek defends himself saying it was only a slip-up. Dong Ryong says genius baduk players aren't allowed to make mistakes, and Taek fights back. Dong Ryong cracks a joke, and they all laugh, including Taek. In the next scene, Deok-sun heads out to school on a rainy morning and finds Young H-won waiting outside their front gate. She asks if he's waiting for her, and he scoffs like that's absurd, when he's clearly doing that very thing. It's another bumpy ride as passengers get jostled back and forth, and this time Young H-won decides to do something about it. He squeezes his way towards the back of the bus where Deok-sun is and positions himself right behind her, and then creates this little space bubble to keep her from getting tossed around. He does this entirely by brute force, using his arms to keep them both in place with all of his strength. Deok-sun notices that she's not being tossed around before she notices Young H-won, which seems impossible since he's basically surrounding her on all sides. But she finally turns around and sees him there, and he just looks away, pretending not to notice her looking at him. Then she looks over at his arm, which is practically turning purple with all the veins popping out as he strains to hold them in place, and she cracks a tiny smile. As Young H-won's mom puts out a used coal briquette on a chilly day, the front page of the newspaper catches wind and sticks on the wall, showing a picture of ex-President Chun Do-H-won in his public apology to the nation. At Deok-sun's house, the kids look at the TV and guess that Dad might be a little late today. The news shows protesters running through streets filled with tear gas and troops advancing on them to quell the demonstration. When Dad gets home, Mom asks if he can't take a different subway station to and from work to avoid the demonstrations, but he points out that they're surrounded by universities on all sides. Their elder daughter, Bora, isn't home yet, and Dad just assumes she's out studying late as always. But when she walks in, they all start wheezing. The smell of tear gas is unmistakable on her. Dad is livid and asks if she's been out protesting. He asks if she's lost her mind and wants to see him dead, but Bora is stone-faced and argues back. The others have to hold Dad back as he screams at the top of his lungs. But Bora shouts back that Dad doesn't know anything, and slams her door shut. Mom tries to mediate, but Dad is inconsolable and shouts to his deceased parents that their granddaughter has lost her mind and is going to piss away her future as a student protester. In her room, Bora quietly takes off her jacket and rolls up her sleeve to dab at the bloody scrapes down her arm. She takes out her books, and tucked inside is a note detailing when and where the next demonstration will be. That night, Sun Woo's grandma comes to visit, and she does nothing but criticize Mom for every little thing. Finally, after years of just taking this kind of abuse from her, Mom says with tears in her eyes that she's a precious daughter to her mother too, and she's not going to take this anymore. She says that she's going to raise her children well and put them through college if she has to cut off her own hair to do it, and tells Grandma that she's no longer welcome in their house. Grandma is huffy all the way out the door and shoves an envelope of money for the grandkids at her. But Mom chases her down the street to give it back to her, insisting that she can raise them on her own. In the morning, Teek runs into Young H1 on his way out, and they head outside together, where they run into Deok Sun getting the morning paper in her PJs. Soon, Sun Woo is here to borrow a dictionary, and Young H1 and Teek seem to find it a little odd. Young H1 thought Sun Woo had that book already, but rationalizes that it'd be cheaper to borrow Deok Sun's copy, since it would be like new. Sun Woo insists on going downstairs with her to get the book, and the other boys watch them intently. Deok Sun shovels her breakfast in and hurries off to the library to study, and Dad marvels at the change in her. Little bro points out that it's her first day going to the library, but Deok Sun says it's the start that matters. Bora left early to study as well, and Dad worries that she's off at another protest or something. Mom insists that she has a big test coming up and goes to the library. Meanwhile, Deok Sun dreams that she's the star of that commercial, with Sun Woo as her trench coat boyfriend smiling back at her. She drools happily while sleeping on the floor of the library. Young H1, Hyung, and Dad are lying around in front of the TV as Mom continues to work around the house, and they don't even get up to answer the damn phone when it's right there. Mom finds out that Grandma injured her ankle and has to head down to the country for 2 days, and begins this hilarious tutorial on how to survive, taking the 3 boys around the house to show them where their underwear is, how to change the coal briquettes, and what to feed themselves so that they don't starve. Deok Sun sleeps the whole day away in the library, then heads home for dinner, where Dad sings her praises for working hard and says he'd be delighted if she just studied half as much as her older sister. On TV, the news is reporting on another student protest, and it's taking place where Bora's note instructed her to be. Sure enough, little bro's eyes widen when he notices Bora on TV, and he quietly nudges Deok Sun to look. They try to distract Dad, but Mom sees it Bora on the front lines of the protest. Dad sees it too, and there's no explaining away this one. She's one of the students with her fist in the air and chanting out in front of everyone. Mom and Dad get up immediately and start putting their coats on, and panic settles over the whole family. But just as they're about to run out the door, Bora trudges in, bloodied up and bruised, but she doesn't look too badly injured. Mom just hugs her fiercely in relief and checks to make sure Bora isn't hurt. But Dad is beside himself and grabs her by the collar and asks if she's totally lost her mind. He says that if she gets arrested, that'll follow her for the rest of her life. And she's not just ruining her whole life, she's putting their entire family in danger. He asks what she's going to do about her mother, who's lived her entire life for her children, and asks how Bora could go to demonstrations knowing that she's putting her mother in harm's way. Dad screams that he's going to cut off all her hair, and Mom tries to get her to say that she's sorry and won't do it again. But Bora is as stubborn as ever and screams that she did not do anything wrong. Dad declares that she's not leaving her room until she apologizes and swears that she'll never protest again, and he tells Mom not to give her a drop of food or water until she complies. Mom cries and pleads with Bora to say that she's sorry, but Bora repeats that she's done nothing wrong and stomps off to her room. Bora buries herself under the covers as Dad's voice comes through the walls, lamenting how much they starved and sacrificed so that she could have a bright future and not be lacking for anything in this world. His voice breaks as he asks how she could drive a nail into her parents' hearts when she knows this. Deok Sun seeks out Dong Ryung's advice over the matter, scared that her sister will be arrested. Dong Ryung says it's okay, they let you go as long as you sign a document saying that you were in the wrong. But that makes Deok Sun feel worse because she knows Bora will never admit that. Back at home, Mom and No Yule get ready for bed and peer over at Dad, who's parked himself in front of Bora's door. He refuses to budge in case Bora tries to escape, and plans to spend the night sitting up like that. Dad's dark circles are halfway down his face after a night of guarding Bora's door. He's even taken the day off of work to stay vigilant in his watchdog duties, and Mom sighs when he refuses to let Bora eat breakfast. Young Hwan's house is a disaster zone, and by morning the heat has gone out and the toilet has stopped up again. Thankfully, Hyung is good at some things and manages to fix what's broken. Sun Woo's mom runs around like a headless chicken all morning, getting her house ready as her mother is visiting. She's out of rice, so she runs over to Young Hwan's house in her socks and carries out a bag of rice to borrow for the day. She does it again to fill her empty fridge, and then again to fill her vanity counter, each time running out of Young Hwan's house with another armful of things. She starts enlisting Hyung's help as well, and when they're done, her shed is full of coal briquettes too. Mom visits and is only there for all of 10 minutes before she runs off again. But she notices the shed full of coal and smiles to see that her daughter is living well. She knows that her mother was here to make sure that she's doing okay on her own, and laughs at everything she went through this morning to prepare for her visit. Deok-sun's dad is still guarding Bora's door, and when he complains about the meager lunch that Mom gives him and asks for an egg, Mom says they're all out. She can't eat with her child locked up and starving, and goes outside to pace in the yard. Mom uses the opportunity to sneak food into Bora's room, though Bora is in no mood to eat. She buries herself in bed and refuses to eat, so Mom finally just leaves the bowl of food by her pillow and tells her to eat it later. We see that it's topped with the last egg that she withheld from Dad. That afternoon, Deok-sun's mom comes back home to find Dad passed out in bed. She goes in to check on Bora too, but she's gone. Oh noes. Mom goes door to door in the neighborhood looking for her in the rain, to no avail. Bora is out at a payphone talking to someone, and then when she heads back out into the rain, she sees 2 officers tailing her out of the corner of her eye. She darts around a corner and tries to hide, but she can't fold her umbrella fast enough and they catch her. They already know her name, they've arrested everyone else from the last protest, and they've come for her. She denies that she was at the demonstration, which they obviously don't believe because her face was plastered all over the news. They're about to take her away when Mom's voice rings down the street, and she comes running to them while getting soaked in the rain. She stands in front of Bora and says her daughter didn't do anything, swearing that her daughter isn't that kind of student. She rambles on and on about what a bright, hardworking student Bora is, and how proud everyone is, in their family and in their whole neighborhood. The whole time Bora looks angry, but then she notices Mom's toe soaked in blood, from where she stubbed it the other day. She's run herself ragged trying to find her, and is pleading with the officers that her child wouldn't do such things. Bora stifles back tears and finally blurts and accepts that she was at the protests. Mom screams and wails and tries to stop them, but they push her aside and take Bora away. Bora paces in a holding cell at the police station, as Mom and Dad sit across from the officers. Dad goes outside for a smoke and Young Hwan and Teek's dads arrive to check on them. Dad says that they're letting Bora out, and Young Hwan's dad advises him to really be stern this time so that she knows she's in trouble. Mom stands outside of the holding cell, refusing to take her eyes off of Bora for 1 second. She just stands there spilling tears and holding a banana to give her when she's out. Young Hwan's house is still a pigsty when he comes home from school. Everyone freezes when they realize Mom is at the terminal. Suddenly everyone's racing around trying to clean and remove all traces of their momless spender. Mom comes home and looks around, but to her surprise, everything looks exactly as it should be. She finds all the side dishes eaten, the laundry put away, and the heat working as it should be. Meanwhile, Deok-sun finally wakes up at her desk in the library and gasps to see the time. She runs out with her backpack overhead to shield herself from the rain. She turns the corner from the library and stops in her tracks. There's Young Hwan standing on the corner with an umbrella. He holds the umbrella over her and puts it in her hand. He simply asks her to come home earlier and walks away. In the morning, Young Hwan steps out and sees Sun Woo hobbling up from Deok-sun's house. This time he's there to borrow a sewing kit, and when Young Hwan says he's heading out to buy batteries, Sun Woo says he has some at his house. Young Hwan heads inside alone while Sun Woo goes to the bathroom and mocks him for alphabetizing his books. He digs around and finds batteries in the drawer, and laughs to see that Deok-sun's dictionary was brand new. just as he suspected. But then he sees something that gives him pause. It's the exact same dictionary, and it's Sunwoo's. The latter comes in to find young Hwan standing there holding both dictionaries, and young Hwan looks down at the sewing kit in Sunwoo's hand and out to the living room where his mother is currently using her big sewing kit to mend a blanket. They look at each other, and no words are spoken, but a lot of things are said.